Okay, so the wall is nearly up. Rake wall, first wall for the garage. Um, Now, using wall jacks, lifting off of a garage floor is a little different than if you're, well, obviously it's different than a wood floor, because a wood floor you can just pound blocks in anywhere. Well, a concrete floor in a house, you can pound blocks in anywhere using a power actuated tool, the one that uses gunpowder to fire nails in, because you're going to be covering it with a carpet or tile or whatever. But a garage floor, you need to keep it pristine, so you got to come up with a way to lift the wall, use the wall jacks, and not have it kick out, obviously. So because I knew I was going to be doing this, I had the concrete guys leave the concrete forms on. They took all the stakes out and stuff, but they just left the forms, and they can't come on. They can't slide this way. I mean, I could take them off this way, but they can't. They're still partially in place. So what I was able to do is a 20-foot wide garage. I've got a 20-foot 2x8. It's going to be my ridge board because the garage is 20 feet deep. So I'm kind of lucky there. So what I was able to do is I was able to put 3-inch screws into the edge of the form board on each side to lock it in place. I mean, I'm not going to recommend you do any of this stuff. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. This is obviously not recommended by the manufacturer of the wall jacks to do stuff like this. So, I mean, but people do what they do. I mean, you're not supposed to pin your blade guard back either when you work, but a lot of framers do. I used to when I was doing production framing. The blade guard is always pinned back because it just gets in the way. But so anyway, so you do stuff that's sometimes a little bit dangerous. I don't consider this dangerous, but it's rigged. It's rigged in a fashion to make it work. And this is what I did. So I've got the 2x8. It's not going to bend and break. 2x8's quite a bit of wood. I mean, you wouldn't want to do it with a 2x4 or even a 2x6, not at 20 feet. Now, if I didn't have a driveway here, the driveway and everything wasn't poured. Obviously, you could pound a stake in the ground where the driveway is, and you could run from that stake to here to kind of support it in the middle from bowing too much under the pressure. Because what happens is, as the wall goes up, the 2x4 is using to jack the wall. They want to push this way. I could screw into these 1x4s here, but it's not really necessary with a 2x8. But if I only had a 2x6, that's what I would do. Anyway, yeah. So then these want to kick out as you're going up because it's a rake wall, so they don't stay straight as you go up. They want to start tilting. So I put diagonals in this way. So it's nailed here and here, and then it's tied back in here. And I use several nails here, several nails here, and this is put in here. I even cut this piece here at an angle so it sits at the same angle as the board, and then I nailed this one to lock it in place so it can't slide out. So these studs that you're using to jack, they're locked in here, and this isn't going to break. I've got 3 screws here, three screws on the other end. Like I said, I'm not recommending you do any of this kind of stuff. Because if something happens, you're going to come back to me or whatever. So you're on your own. But this, I'm just giving you an idea of what people do. The rest is up to you. Maybe you're not even comfortable doing this. But framing's dangerous. This is not dangerous, but I'm just saying it's, stuff happens. Nothing ever happened to me, luckily, or on my job sites, but stuff happens. So anyway, so that's kind of now you could also, if you got a couple of guys, this is for a guy working alone, and then I'm doing the entire wall. I'm putting the sheeting on. I even put the overhang on. So the overhang is on. You know, I run it long on the ends because those will get cut off when I cut the rest of the rafter tails off after I get all the rafters installed. So you just run them longer than you need. So this is one guy lifting a wall with all this material on it. The only way to do it is with wall jacks. If you're going to use wall jacks, you need to know how to secure them. So you need to think about what you're doing when you're doing stuff. You always need to be thinking, okay, what am I trying to do, and how am I going to get there, and how am I going to do it safely, right? So you got to always be thinking. So anyway, this is just an idea. Let's put it that way. If I didn't have the concrete forms here, I would have taken a 2x4. You know, I would have ran this longer, so maybe I couldn't use a 20-foot. Maybe you only have 16-footers, and you just got to add on. But anyway, so I would run it longer, and I would pound a 2x4, cut a point on a 2x4, pound it down to the ground. You know, pretty good and decent to stop this. You know, right? So you'd pound that in, and then you'd pound another one in a couple feet back, and then you'd run a piece of 2x4 flatways down at an angle to meet the base, from the base of this one up to the top of this one. You know, had to keep this one here. I mean, if you got really solid hard ground, obviously it's probably not going to move, but you want to make sure it's not going to move. So then I'd run another one back to the base of this one and nail it, and then they would keep it. That's what I would do if I didn't have the concrete forms here to do this. I just didn't want to go through the extra work, so I told the concrete guy I'll strip the forms off. Just take the stakes out, and I'll take them off later. Anyway, so that's how I deal with this situation. And then on this wall, on these garage walls, because for me the soil is too close to especially on this side of the house, I didn't want it to bring in a bunch of soil or have really thick concrete slab to bring it up. I don't like OSB being too close to the ground, so the bottom 6 inches all the way around the garage, I cut 6-inch strips of pressure treated plywood, so one sheet was enough to do this entire garage all the way around, and did that so that now the OSB is going to start up higher. I mean, you know, the OSB is going to last, but you don't want somebody in 25 years from now or 30 years from now having to spend hundreds of dollars pulling siding off and replacing dry rotted OSB because you wanted to save a little time and $50 in materials or whatever. So it's kind of so that's what I did with that. And I extended it down because I needed to cover here, because I need to nail in here and then nail in here, here, and here, because on the inside of this wall I ran 2x6 blocking turn on the side so that this is all locked together. Which I can show you here real quick. See, so I just ran 2x6 block. This is not pressure treated blocking, but it doesn't need to be because it's protected from the outside. Anyway, so and I'll do that all the way around the garage. Now, there are some places where, like on this side, where the wall is more than far enough off the ground that I don't need to worry about dry rot. But I'm just staying consistent all the way around. So I'm just going to do it all the way around, even though here the wall is more than this corner is more than a foot off the ground. But anyway, yeah. So that's just something to think about. Like I said, when you build stuff, you got to think that what you're building is going to be there for 50 years, 100 years, or whatever. You know, you're not building stuff that lasts a week. So when you do it, take the time to make sure that it lasts that long, or that you don't cost somebody a lot of headache in the future because you want to save a few bucks or because you're in a hurry or whatever. You know, you just want to approach building with that mentality, whether you're building for yourself, or you're building for other people, or whatever. So, I mean, I'm building for other people, basically. I'm building this house and then I'm selling it. So somebody else is going to own this, and another person, and long after I'm gone. So anyway, so that's a little something on that subject there. It's another subject. That's a whole video, I think, just covering that subject. Anyway, so then, of course, now this wall is going to want to keep on going to fall over this way, especially since now I've got a weight hanging over it. So how do I stop that? So I set up pounded a 1x4 stake into the ground, put a point on it, pounded in the ground a little bit, and then I nailed this 2x4 into here, into this green plate, just to stabilize it so it doesn't want to fall over this way, so that it doesn't try to fall over sideways. And then I put a level on it, and I made it pretty close to level, because when I get this wall up here, I want it pretty close to the position that it's going to be in level wise. I mean, I don't want it laying back too far, because it's hard to pull it back the other way. So I mean, I didn't make it perfectly level, but I mean, it's a little bit back, maybe a 1/4 inch back. Okay, so, and then I cut a piece of 2x4. I also didn't cut this, this is a 16 footer, so I cut it off to make sure that it's not going to get in the way of the overhang when it gets up, right? So it needs to be lower than the overhang. And then, now I got lucky, I've got about a 3,000 pound pack of hardy board sitting there to block against. If I didn't, again, I'd pound a 2x4 stake into the ground, and I would be pushing against that. This isn't gonna, there's not a lot of force here wanting to push it over. What you try and do is to keep it from continuing, And the other thing is too, is that lucky today I've got the wind coming this way. It's always good to push against the wind and have it behind you and make it, when you get the wall almost up and then the wind, wants to give it a little boost, unexpected boost. But anyway, yeah. So and then I put the 2x4 at angle. I saw where I needed to cut it. I cut it, and I put some nails. I took the nail gun and put like 3 nails in here. So it's not going anywhere. So when this wall comes up, it'll stop here. And then I'll leave this wall in that position. I'll brace it off on each end, and then it'll just this thing will just stay there until I don't need it anymore. Until I get the sidewalls in, it's locked together. And then also I lifted it a little too far, and then the plywood started binding on the top of this 2x4. I lifted the wall a little too far, so at the point where this plywood here, the bottom edge, started binding on this. The wall was back farther, so it started binding here. So what I had to do was I had to go inside here, and then I took a 16-foot 2x4 and turned it on edge, and I started banging the bottom of the wall to push it over so that plywood on the outside will go over the piece below, and and get this in the right position anyway. So, and because there's those bolts in the bottom that I had put in, the leg bolts, this isn't gonna want to go flying out anyway. I mean, so I'm just banging. I'm just going along and banging on it until I get it. It's just about ready now. Until I get this plywood here. It was back here. It was back farther, right? So then I pushed this out, and then this plywood now is on this side of this. So now I can continue raising the wall, and then the plywood will end up down here. But by banging on this way, it's not going to go flying out. I mean, I'm banging hard enough to move it, but I'm not really wailing on it. But these leg bolts that are on here that have bolted this to the foundation, and then remember we drilled, if you saw my other video on this, I drilled the bottom of this one here to fit over the bolt head. Those bolts are already kind of holding this. It's not going to just kick all the way out. And then also I have something here to stop it, and then I even put a block here to stop it, just in case. But anyway, so that's kind of how this all goes. Also, I've got one here too, which I was able to secure into the concrete forms, and that'll keep. See, this side it's still back a little ways yet. See, it's still, the plywood here is here. See, it's still sitting at one step. So I need to go back in with that 2x4 and push this so that this moves over, and then when I tip the wall up, it'll go down like that. Here. See, the plywood's kind of hard to see, but anyway, that's the plywood. It needs to. So just this end of the wall, I need to bang it over a bit. Anyway, so that's kind of it. Another thing too to consider when you're doing stuff like this is how heavy is your wall. I mean, this is a 2x4 wall. It's only 20 feet long. It's got a 412 pitch. There's not a lot of weight here in the world of walls. If you're on the West Coast, I used to live on the West Coast and frame there. The wood isn't kiln dried. It's heavy as heck, right? So it's as heavy as pressure treated lumber is when you buy it from this. Wet and heavy that is. Well, all the lumber on the West Coast is that way. A lot of times they frame with 2x6s, so this wall would be, to be double the weight at least. OSB is the same, but the framing lumber is much heavier, or you could be doing a much longer wall. So it's another thing to consider, you know, when you do stuff. Like I said, you're on your own. You got to figure it out. I don't want to be responsible for something. I'm just kind of showing you what I do, and kind of telling you, you know what, I'm lifting a 20-foot wall with kiln dried lumber with a 412 pitch, and you know, 8 foot tall at the plate. So, you know, it's not a real heavy wall. Anyway, yeah, okay, I think that's it. Back to work.